Hi guys, this is again part lesson number 3, part number C. So now we will try to understand the routes and controllers. If you haven't actually covered the Composer or Hello World project, I will strictly say that just go back and check these lessons and then come again. So it all start to make sense. So yeah, let's go ahead and check the routes and controllers. I will just minimize this and okay, so we'll remove this code. We don't need it anymore. Okay, just to clarify, okay, so how the request in any PHP application usually works. So this is the customer actually open a page in the browser. So what happens after he opens the page? So the request actually goes to a server, a web server. For the PHP, most of the time it's either Nginx or Apache or another flavor of Apache HTTPD. So most of the time it goes to here, and actually web server then figure out if I have this app installed on my server or not. If it is installed, then it go ahead and ask the app to to give the proper information related to this URL. So what it essentially does is whenever a customer requests a page, so web server actually resolve this. So usually when a customer actually requests a page, it is in the form of this laravel.com. So and then it goes to the particular server who is hosting the laravel.com, which is the web server. So the web server so what the web server does is it actually has these programs installed, Nginx, Apache, or HTTPD, which actually serve the content from the PHP application and convert these contents to HTML, proper HTML, and then send it back to the user. So on the web server, it actually resolved the laravel.com to a proper folder or proper app application, which is in our case will be a Laravel application. So once the Laravel application is resolved, so this whole rendering process or getting the HTML process is delegated to the Laravel app. So once the Laravel app then actually consult its routes directory, consult its route and see if it can serve the route or not. For example, if we requested laravel.com models, if it doesn't exist, it will show an error 404. I cannot serve this route. For example, but in case if Laravel actually provide this API, provide this route, for example, in our case, it's for example laravel.com documentation. And if it can serve the route, it will check which controller actually can serve or has the mapping between this route, has the mapping for this route. For example, what I mean by mapping is in Laravel application we actually specify okay this route documentation will be served by this controller, document controller at index. Okay, if we I'll just remove this. Okay, so so now from this we understand. Okay, in the Laravel we can actually add a mapping between a route and a controller. So what it tells is like controller is the main executioner of this page. Actually, a main component which uh, talks to the other components, like for example database, and then it gets the essential the data that it needs to be displayed, and then this control actually passes this data to the view, and then this is the job of Laravel framework to render the data in the view and send it back to the customer. So so now we understand the request lifecycle, and now we'll see like we'll try to add some routes and see if this works or not. So this route actually can serve multiple type of content. It can be HTML, it can be JSON. It sometimes there is no content itself. It only sends the headers as well. You don't have to serve the content. We will get to that later. We'll see like what kind of request actually don't serve any content. So yeah, let's go ahead and add our route. This is the default route that we have that actually comes with the Laravel. So we'll add our own route. For example, first route. Let's first try to understand what this function is does. Okay, so we discussed it. Okay, well, for each route there is a controller responsible for uh, actually producing the response for this route. But sometimes it's not the case. You can actually this is not just the controller. Actually, there is a method for the controller as well. So we are telling this route directory to add a mapping for this route between this route and this controller, this method. So essentially what it means is, so document controllers index method actually serves the content for the documentation. So yeah, eventually it is the responsibility of a method. So here we're not adding any controller, we're just putting a method that will actually serve the content. So in our case we just want to serve a string. uh, this is this is the first round. Okay, let's go ahead in the browser and see if it works. Okay, cool. So apart from HTML, so now we know that we can serve HTML, we can serve JSON, we can serve string, and we can also send just header and without any content. So yeah, this is the first thing. We actually covered the string. We can serve the string from a route. There are very few example like why we want to serve a string, which we usually don't. We usually serve a JSON string, and also that is in the case of APIs or API requests. We don't actually have to serve the string. This is just an example. So next thing we will try to understand, we can send the JSON and how we can send the JSON. For example, let's build our data object. For example, this is our data object. This is an array, and the first key is hello, and the value is 1. This is a simple PHP object, and let's try to send this data in the browser. Let's see if this works or not. Let's come and yeah, cool. So here we know like whenever we want to serve JSON, we can serve JSON. So we just build a simple PHP array, and we send we give it to the route, and route actually try to convert this array into JSON and send the JSON to the browser. Okay, now the third thing, we'll cover the HTML part. So to send the HTML, we can just send the HTML as a string as well. For example, let's try to send the string as HTML. Hello world. We can do this as well. But this is not ideal because this is not what we want to send to the user. So we want to send a comprehensive view. For example, in case of just let's see an example from the Laravel.com. Okay, in the Laravel, this is a whole page, and this is made of bunch of components. For example, this is a header component. This is a search component. This is the banner or the hero component, and then there are the contents. This is another component which is described in Laravel 4. Then there is another component, and then there is another component. You cannot have all of these components using this string. So for this, actually, Laravel gives us another very nice thing, that is views. We will discuss it in our next episode. Let's check how to delegate all of this functionality to the controller now. Let's go ahead and create our first controller. We'll go to terminal. Let's go to terminal here. Let's clear the screen and confirm the directory. Okay, to create your controller, you will just write php artisan make controller, my first controller. Okay, it will create my first controller here. Let's go ahead and check where does it create the controller. So all as we discussed, like all the application code actually reside inside the app directory. Let's go ahead and open the app directory. In the app directory, there is HTTP folder which corresponds to HTTP side of the application, and there is a console which corresponds to the console side of the application, or CLI, or you may say like cron jobs are here. Let's go ahead and check the controllers, and there is our first controller. Okay, let's go ahead and write our first method, public function index, and let's send a string. Uh, my first controller at index method. This controller method will only send the string. Let's go ahead and map this controller method to a route. Okay, I will remove this part of the code. Okay, let's go ahead and refresh our application here. Okay. So in Laravel, it will not it does not work by default, because the reason is, if you to map the controller to a proper route, you just have to go to config providers and route server. Sorry, app providers and route service provider. And you will see here there's a namespace here. We have to uncomment this namespace, and now actually it knows where to find the controllers. So this is the namespace that where controller resides. So now whenever we write our controller in action, so it will know, like, okay, my controllers are in app http controller. So this is app http controller. Let's go ahead and check this index folder, index method. Okay, so now our index method is there. Let's go ahead and refresh our application. Cool. So it works. So now you know, like, how to create a route and map it to a controller. So this is the first thing. Let's go ahead and send some JSON content as well. So whatever you can do in the route file, you can do here as well. Let's go ahead and create our data, and let's put some data into this. Um, Laravel block. Let's change this a little bit, and let's send the data. Let's see if it can render a complex array or not. Let's go ahead and refresh this page. Cool. So now we can send the JSON into this as well. And the last thing we need to do, we try with string, we try with JSON. For HTML, we can try with the HTML as well. Let's go ahead and send some HTML. And let's refresh this. Hello world. Okay, so in this lesson we try to understand the request lifecycle, and how the request is passed to the browser, then to web server, and then web server to the application, and application has this routing registry, for which it consult the route, and it send the request to proper controller function, and then this function actually send the content to the user. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll try to understand the views. So yeah, if you have any comment, any question, you can ask. I will make a video on that. I will try to explain it in my next videos. So yeah, thank you very much. Bye bye. Cheers.